Using this API client, now we should be able to invoke our backend REST API. But the question right now we should ask ourselves is, from where we are going to invoke our backend REST API? Can we go ahead and write the logic inside this JSX code? Of course not. That is not the recommendation. Instead, we are going to leverage a concept called hooks, which is available inside the React. Let's try to understand what is this hooks concept. I came to the React official website here. I'm going to type hooks and open this built-in React hooks link. Here they clearly highlighted hooks let you use different React features from your component. You can either use the built-in hooks available inside the React library or combine them to build our own React hooks. For example, here there is a hook with the name useState. Let me open the same. UseState is a React hook that lets you add a state variable to your component. This is the syntax to use the useState. React hook is nothing but a function which is exposed by the React library. But these functions, they have a special purpose. For example, useState has a special purpose. With the help of this useState hook, we should be able to maintain a state variable inside our functional component. Similarly, there are good amount of other React hooks available. We're going to talk in detail about the React hooks in the upcoming sections because React hooks is a very big concept and it is an important concept as well. Without learning React hooks, you can't claim yourself as a React developer. But since inside this section, our target is to establish the connection between the UI and backend, I'm trying to give just a quick introduction to the React hooks. But if something is not clear, don't worry. When we start discussing about the React hooks in detail, everything is going to be super clear for you. I'm going to use this useState inside my React component. The reason why I want to use useState hook inside my home component is, as of now inside my home component, we are maintaining a variable with the name products. This variable we are trying to read from the product.js. This variable is an array, the same we are trying to use inside the home.jsx. But now we want to get rid of this option. Instead, we want to load the products information from the backend application. Inside my functional component, I need to use the useState hook. Let me type import followed by useState, which is available inside the React library. Let me copy this syntax and paste it here just above the return statement. I'm going to mention the initial state as empty array. Initially, my products, it is going to have empty array, but by the time the REST API invocation is completed and I get the response from the backend, it is going to have all the products that is sent by my backend. Once we define this initial data for the state variable, we need to define the variable name. So here they have mentioned the variable name as state, but instead I want to use the products. That's why I'm trying to mention the same here, followed by whenever someone want to update my products state variable, they need to invoke the function name with the name set to products. This function name can be anything, but it is always standard to have a prefix of set followed by your state variable name. The same I'm trying to follow here, set to products. As of now, this state variable products, it is holding an empty array. But once the API invocation is completed, we want to update these products state variable with the data that we receive from the backend. Under such scenarios, you should not directly update this products variable. Instead, you need to use the set to products function that is exposed by the useState React hook. There is a strong reason why you should use this set to products only to update the state variable. We're going to discuss those details in the upcoming sections. For now, please note, this is our state variable name. This is the function that we need to invoke whenever we want to update the data into the state variable. And this is the initial state value that we are trying to assign to these products. As a next step, I want to use another hook available in the React library. The hook name is useEffect. Let me search for useEffect inside the official documentation. UseEffect is a React hook that lets you synchronize a component with an external system. The whole purpose of this UseEffect hook is whatever logic that you're going to provide under this UseEffect hook, the same will be executed when your functional component is being mounted onto the DOM for the very first time. We know inside a React UI application, there will be a lot of components. all these components, they are going to be processed and rendered by the React library into the actual browser DOM. When the rendering is happening for the very first time, that process we call it as mounting of the component. Whereas rendering is the process which is going to happen whenever the state of your application is changing. I know it is going to be too complex at this point of time to understand you about these hooks. Don't worry if something is not clear. Like I promised before, we're going to discuss everything around the hooks in the upcoming lectures. For now, please note that use effect is a React hook that we can use in the scenarios where we want to invoke some external system whenever the mounting of the component is happening for the first time. Here, just below the use state, I'm going to use effect, and this use effect, it is going to accept two input parameters. The first parameter is a function that is going to be executed by the React library whenever your component is being mounted onto the browser DOM. And the second parameter is dependencies. This dependencies parameter is completely optional. Since we are getting started with the use effect, for now, I'm going to mention these dependencies as empty. Here, the very first parameter, I'm going to mention an arrow function followed by an empty dependencies. So this is what a simple syntax of use effect is going to look like. Whatever logic I'm going to write inside this arrow function, the same is going to be executed by the React library when this home component is being mounted onto my React application for the first time. During that mount operation, we want to make an REST API call. When the mount operation is going to happen? When I'm trying to load my home page for the first time. During the exact time, if I make a REST API call and get the products, the same products can be leveraged to display my entire home component. So that's the whole plan. For your reference, let me mention some comments here. This use effect, it is going to run once when the component mounts. Mounting is the process of creating and adding the component into the DOM. Just after the use effect, let me create a function with the name fetch products. This is also an arrow function. That's why I'm trying to mention this arrow syntax. The same function I'll try to invoke inside this use effect arrow function. As of now, my fetch products is empty. But I'm going to update these fetch products with a good amount of logic. I can write that logic directly inside the use effect, but I want to keep my use effect hook as clean as possible. That's why I'm trying to outsource the logic to this fetch products function. If required, you can maintain this function in some other file. And if needed, you can use these fetch products at multiple other places. Let's define some logic inside these fetch products. First, I want to define a constant with the name response, and on the right hand side, with the help of this API client, I want to invoke an get REST API. That's why I need to type get, because our REST API that we have built so far in the backend, it is going to support only the HTTP GET method. In case if you want to use post, you need to invoke the post method. Similarly, there is put method, patch method, delete method. So there are different methods available inside the Axios that you can use based upon the type of the REST API that you're trying to invoke. So let me mention .get, and to this get, I'm going to pass the path of my REST API. The path is /products. The base path we already defined under the API client. If you go to this API client, here we already defined the base path. Apart from the base path, we need to mention the actual REST API path, which is products. Here, let me mention comment saying that this is an Axios GET request. So this GET method, it is always going to invoke my REST API asynchronously, and it is going to return a promise. That's why what I have to do is I just have to mention await just before this logic, because I want to wait for the REST API response followed by I want to execute the next business logic. We are getting a compilation error here because we can't use await inside a normal JavaScript function. To make this work, we need to mark this function as async function. With that, the error is going to get resolved. So the output from my products, I'm going to get as response. Once the response is received, I want to update the products state variable. To update the product state variable, we need to use this set to products function. Let me use the same, and to this function, I'm going to pass response.data as an input. So all my product details, they are going to be available inside the response under this data variable. Let me mention some comments here saying that update product state with the fetched data. I think we are done with all the required changes inside the component. So use state is ready and use effect is ready. Let me start my React UI application by running the command npm run dev. And behind the scenes, please make sure your backend application also is running. Are you ready to see the response? Don't get excited. We are going to get some error. Let me click on this link. Boom! Inside my browser, I'm getting empty page. Let me see the error inside the console. I'm getting some error inside my product listings. This is not the error that I'm expecting. Seems our REST API invocation is not happening. Let me see what is the problem. After spending few minutes, I'm able to figure out the problem inside the .env. When you define this constant, at the end, we have mentioned comma. We should not mention this. Let me remove the same. Sometimes even an extra comma can result into some critical issues. This is one such classic example. Let me save this file. Now, if I go to the browser, this time I'm getting some basic response. Let me try to refresh and confirm the same one more time. Yes, I'm getting the same basic response. There are no product details. Let's try to understand what is the problem by looking at the console. Inside the console, I'm getting an error saying that the communication between the backend and my React application has been blocked by CARS policy. CARS is a famous error inside the industry. To establish the communication between our UI and backend application, we need to resolve this CARS error. That's why in the next lecture, let's try to understand what is a CARS error, why we are getting this error, and how to resolve this error.